Imagine living in a house where your bedroom, kitchen, living room, and even your dining room are hidden beneath the ground. There are no normal streets lined with houses, no rows of rooftops stretching toward the horizon. Instead, you see a dry, almost empty landscape covered with rocks, dirt, and strange piles of earth.
This stew is wonderful tonight.
But beneath that harsh surface, an entire community is hiding. People sleep underground. They eat underground. They escape the extreme heat underground. And some of these homes are so comfortable that you could easily forget you are several meters beneath the surface. This isn't a science fiction movie. This place is real. It's called Coober Pedy, a remote town in South Australia, famous around the world for its underground homes and its enormous opal mining industry. At first glance, Coober Pedy doesn't look like the kind of place where anyone would want to live. The landscape is incredibly dry, with almost no natural shade and very little vegetation. During summer, temperatures can become brutally hot, while the surrounding desert offers little protection from the sun. So why would people choose to build their homes underground? The answer begins with something hidden beneath their feet. Opal Coober Pedy became famous because some of the world's most valuable opals are found beneath this region. For generations, miners have dug into the ground searching for these colorful gemstones. But as they dug deeper and created underground tunnels, they discovered something else. The ground wasn't just useful for mining, it was also an incredible place to build a home. And this is where the story of Coober Pedy becomes truly fascinating. Imagine standing outside on a scorching summer afternoon. The sun is beating directly down on you. There are very few trees. There is almost no natural shade. The air feels hot and dry. But then you walk through a doorway built into the side of a hill and enter a home carved into the earth. Suddenly, everything changes. The temperature becomes much more comfortable. The sunlight disappears. The thick walls of earth surrounding you provide natural insulation, and you realize that the underground isn't necessarily a dark and miserable place. It can actually be surprisingly comfortable. This is one of the biggest reasons people in Coober Pedy built what are commonly called dugouts. A dugout is essentially a home excavated into the rock or earth. Instead of building a house above the ground and then trying to protect it from the desert heat, people use the ground itself as insulation. The temperature underground changes much more slowly than the temperature outside. So while the surface can become extremely hot during the day, the underground environment remains comparatively stable. And that means residents don't have to fight the desert climate in exactly the same way as people living in conventional houses. The deeper you go, the more impressive these homes can become. Some underground houses contain multiple rooms connected by hallways. There can be bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, living rooms, storage areas, and even entertainment spaces. From the outside, you might see nothing more than a simple entrance. But behind that entrance could be an entire home hidden inside the earth. And here's something even more surprising. Some of these underground homes don't feel like caves at all. They can have furniture, decorations, electricity, lighting, modern kitchens, comfortable bedrooms, and everything you would expect from an ordinary house. The walls may still reveal the texture of the surrounding earth, but inside, the space can feel surprisingly modern. So how did this unusual way of living begin? The story goes back to the early days of mining in the region. Coober Pedy's name itself is connected to the Aboriginal history of the area, while the modern town developed around the discovery and mining of opal. When miners began arriving in large numbers, they needed somewhere to live. But building conventional houses in such a harsh environment wasn't easy. Materials were expensive to transport. The climate was unforgiving, and beneath the surface was something miners already knew how to work with: rock and earth. So instead of always building upward, people began digging inward. A mining tunnel could sometimes be expanded into a living space. A hole that started as part of a mining operation could eventually become a bedroom. Another section could become a kitchen, and before long, an entire underground living space could take shape. In a strange way, the same thing that made the town valuable also helped make it livable. The miners were searching beneath the ground for opal, but while doing that, they discovered a practical way to escape the extreme desert environment above, and this created one of the most unusual communities on Earth. But living underground comes with its own challenges. You can't simply dig a hole and expect it to become a safe home. The structure has to be stable. Ventilation is important. Water and electricity need to be managed. And the underground space has to be designed carefully so that people can actually live there comfortably. Modern underground homes therefore use proper engineering, ventilation systems, electrical infrastructure, and other features that make them suitable for everyday life. Another major advantage is energy efficiency. Because the surrounding earth acts as insulation, underground spaces can remain relatively stable compared with the rapidly changing temperatures at the surface. That can reduce the amount of energy needed to keep the interior comfortable. So what initially looks like an extreme lifestyle can actually be a clever response to the environment. Instead of trying to completely control the desert, people adapted their homes to work with it. And this is perhaps the most interesting lesson from Kuba Pedy. Human beings have always adapted their architecture to their surroundings. In cold regions, people developed buildings designed to retain heat. In hot regions, people developed structures designed to create shade and airflow. And in Kuba Pedy, people discovered that the earth itself could become part of the house. But there is another reason Kuba Pedy's underground world is so fascinating. The town isn't simply a collection of private homes. There are underground public spaces and businesses as well. Visitors can explore underground churches, shops, and other structures that demonstrate just how far this idea can go. One of the most famous underground attractions is the Serbian Orthodox Church, which was carved into the sandstone. There are also underground museums and other spaces where visitors can learn about the town's mining history and the lives of the people who lived beneath the surface. Walking through these places can feel almost unreal. You enter through what looks like an ordinary opening in the ground. Then suddenly you're surrounded by carved walls, underground rooms, and passages. Above you is the desert. But around you is an entire hidden world. And perhaps the most surprising thing is that underground living isn't just an old mining trick. People still live in underground homes in Kuba Pedy today. For some residents, the underground lifestyle is practical. For others, it has become part of the town's unique identity. And for visitors, it's one of the things that makes Kuba Pedy unlike almost anywhere else. But why didn't people simply plant trees, build larger houses, or create more shade above ground? Because the environment makes those solutions difficult. Kuba Pedy receives very little rainfall, and vegetation is naturally limited. Large-scale landscaping isn't easy in such an arid environment, and when temperatures become extreme, a thick layer of earth can provide something that artificial shade alone cannot: natural insulation. This is why the underground home isn't simply a strange architectural curiosity, it's an adaptation. The people living there are essentially using the planet itself as part of their building. Instead of placing a thin wall between themselves and the desert, they're surrounding themselves with meters of earth. That earth blocks direct sunlight and slows down temperature changes, and the result can be a remarkably stable interior environment. But there is one thing you shouldn't forget. Kuba Pedy is still a mining town. The underground spaces exist in a landscape shaped by decades of digging. And that means the town also has to deal with the risks associated with mining. Not every tunnel is suitable for living. Abandoned mine workings can be dangerous, structural stability matters, and underground construction needs to be carefully controlled. This is why modern underground homes aren't simply random holes in the ground. They are carefully excavated spaces designed around the geological conditions of the area, and that makes Kuba Pedy even more impressive. What looks like a bizarre lifestyle from the outside is actually the result of generations of people learning how to survive in an extreme environment. They had a valuable resource beneath them. They had an unforgiving climate above them, and eventually they found a way to use both realities to their advantage. The desert gave them opal, and the ground gave them shelter. That's what makes Kuba Pedy so unusual. In most cities, people build upward. They construct houses, apartments, towers, and skyscrapers that rise above the landscape. But in Kuba Pedy, part of the community went in the opposite direction. They built downward, and instead of fighting, the desert with enormous amounts of technology, they discovered that one of the simplest materials around them could do much of the work. Earth today, Kuba Pedy is famous not only for its opals, but also for this extraordinary underground lifestyle. People travel from around the world to see the unusual landscape, visit underground buildings, learn about opal mining, and experience what it's like to walk through a home hidden beneath the desert. And when you finally understand why these people chose to live underground, the mystery becomes much less mysterious. They weren't simply trying to build a strange city. They were trying to solve a very practical problem. How do you live comfortably in one of Australia's harshest environments? Their answer was surprisingly simple. Go underground. Because sometimes the best way to escape the heat isn't to build a taller building, install a bigger air conditioner, or create more shade. Sometimes the best shelter is already beneath your feet. And in Kuba Pedy, that simple idea helped create one of the most unusual communities on Earth. A town where the most fascinating part of the city isn't what you see above the ground. It's what you can't see until you walk inside.